Every day, good teachers walk out of classrooms with tears in their eyes and resignation letters in their hands. Not because they don't care, but because care has cost them everything. The profession that once demanded passion, creativity, and leadership has become a pressure cooker of stress, disrespect, and emotional exhaustion. The question isn't why teachers are quitting. The real question is, how have they lasted this long? In the past, teachers were held in high regard. They were community figures, respected for shaping the next generation's minds. Today, they're being treated like glorified babysitters, undervalued, overworked, and under constant scrutiny. Instead of being backed by administrators and parents, they're blamed when students misbehave, underperform, or fall through the cracks. Every outburst, every misgrade, every disciplinary issue falls on the shoulders of the teacher. It's an unsustainable burden. What most people don't see is that teachers are being forced to wear multiple hats: educator, social worker, psychologist, and sometimes even law enforcement. They're expected to teach kids who haven't had breakfast, haven't slept, and in many cases, haven't seen any form of structure or discipline at home. Add in overcrowded classrooms, budget cuts, outdated materials, and the growing pressure to teach to the test, and the role becomes less about impact and more about survival. There's no time to inspire when you're just trying to maintain order. Then comes the disrespect, not just from students, but from the system itself. In many schools, students speak to teachers with zero regard for authority. Foul language, blatant defiance, and even physical threats are not uncommon. Yet, teachers are often told to de-escalate or understand behavior, rather than being empowered to enforce discipline. Meanwhile, parents are quick to side with their children, blaming teachers instead of holding their kids accountable. Respect is no longer assumed. It has to be begged for, and even then it's rarely given. And let's not ignore the financial toll. Teachers, many of whom carry advanced degrees, are working for salaries that often fall below a livable wage. They buy their own supplies, work unpaid overtime, and are expected to stay late. Show up early and smile through it all. It's not just emotionally draining. It's economically degrading. This is the daily reality that's pushing thousands of teachers to walk away, not from the kids, but from a broken system. These are passionate, purpose-driven people who once believed they could change lives. Now, they're exhausted, emotionally numb, and questioning if their efforts even matter. When a system continually disrespects and undermines the people trying to keep it afloat, it doesn't just lose teachers, it loses its future. At some point, even the most devoted person has to choose their mental health over a job that's slowly killing them. And that's where we are. Teachers aren't quitting because they failed. They're quitting because they've been set up to fail, and they're finally saying, enough. Walk into many classrooms today, and it doesn't feel like a place of learning. It feels like a battlefield, not of fists and violence, but of attention, control, and sanity. Teachers aren't fighting students anymore. They're fighting an entire culture of entitlement that has taken over the minds of the youngest generation. What was once a room for focus and curiosity has turned into a stage for attitude, disrespect, and unchecked egos. The modern classroom is crumbling under the weight of Gen Alpha's demand to be entertained instead of educated. This new generation is growing up with dopamine on tap. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, instant gratification from touchscreens, and digital rewards. They've never had to wait, never had to earn attention, never had to sit through discomfort. When teachers stand in front of them asking for patience, discipline, and attention, they're not just being ignored, they're being challenged. Many of these students don't see their teachers as authority figures. They see them as background noise interrupting their inner world of instant pleasure. The consequences are staggering. Classrooms are being hijacked by students who feel zero obligation to listen, contribute, or grow. It's not uncommon to see students scrolling through phones mid-lesson, talking back with open defiance, or simply refusing to engage. And when teachers try to restore order or set boundaries, they're often portrayed as the problem, as if expecting basic respect is outdated. The system bends over backward to accommodate poor behavior, but barely lifts a finger to protect the teachers trying to maintain structure. What's even more disturbing is that entitlement is being rewarded. Schools, afraid of pushback from parents or low scores on district-wide reports, often pressure teachers to just pass students, even when they've done little to no work. The message this sends to Gen Alpha is clear. You don't need effort, manners, or discipline. Just show up, and the world will still give you a medal. It's a dangerous precedent that is breeding a generation completely unprepared for real-world consequences. And this isn't just about bad manners. It's about the erosion of work ethic and personal accountability. Many Gen Alpha students expect praise for minimal effort and cry unfair when they're challenged. They've been shielded from failure, coddled from discomfort, and raised in environments where saying no is considered harsh. The result? They enter adolescence with fragile egos, weak discipline, and an inflated sense of self-worth. Teachers are supposed to fix this, but without the power, support, or time to do so. At the heart of it all is a painful truth. Many kids aren't learning because they don't want to. And they don't want to because society, technology, and parenting trends have convinced them they don't have to. Teachers are left standing alone, trying to teach life lessons to students who believe they already know everything. That's not just a difficult job. It's an impossible one. And in that chaos, education suffers, morale collapses, and another teacher quietly decides they've had enough. A boy without a father is like a ship without a rudder adrift, unstable, and dangerously close to sinking. Walk through the halls of many schools today, and you'll see the silent damage everywhere. Boys acting out, checked out, or completely lost. Behind the rising chaos in classrooms and the emotional volatility of Gen Alpha lies a deeper crisis that few are willing to confront: the disappearance of strong male role models. In a world obsessed with inclusivity and soft approaches, the value of masculinity has been pushed aside. The problem is, boys still need it. They need discipline, structure, and a clear example of what it means to be a man. Without it, they seek identity and validation in all the wrong places: online influencers, video games, peer groups, or through rebellion. Many of the boys struggling most in school aren't unintelligent or incapable. They're simply unanchored. And teachers are left trying to fill a role they were never meant to play: that of the missing father, coach, or male leader. Teachers, especially male teachers, are already rare in elementary and middle schools. That absence matters. For many young boys, especially those from broken homes or unstable environments, school is the only place they might encounter adult men. But when those men are gone or never there to begin with, the impact is massive. Boys grow up without boundaries, without healthy discipline and direction. They don't know how to handle failure, process emotions, or respect authority. So they lash out, or worse, shut down completely. What makes it harder is that many schools are not designed to foster the kind of strength and structure boys naturally respond to. Zero-tolerance policies and sensitivity training have their place, but when used as substitutes for real discipline and leadership, they leave boys confused and resentful. The boy who gets punished for standing up for himself, while the one who disrespects the teacher gets a restorative circle, quickly learns that fairness and strength don't matter. That confusion builds anger. That anger eventually turns into apathy. And while the world debates how to educate Gen Alpha, the emotional void left by absent fathers continues to grow. Boys aren't just falling behind academically. They're collapsing emotionally. Depression, addiction, low motivation, and behavioral issues are on the rise, and schools can't solve them alone. No curriculum can replace the presence of strong, steady male influence in a child's life. No policy can replicate the confidence and sense of identity a father or mentor can provide. The truth is painful but clear. Boys are not failing school. The system is failing them by pretending masculinity doesn't matter. We cannot talk about the education crisis without talking about the fatherhood crisis. Until boys have real men to look up to, learn from, and be challenged by, the classroom will remain a place of frustration instead of growth. Because without guidance, the next generation of young men won't rise. They'll disappear. We're raising a generation of kids who can code a TikTok, but can't hold a conversation, balance a budget, or handle a simple setback without falling apart. School was once a place where young people were prepared for life. But today, it's become a place where real-life skills are ignored in favor of test scores, buzzwords, and political agendas. The result? Gen Alpha is walking out of school with diplomas, but no idea how to thrive in the real world. Ask yourself, what's more important, knowing how to take a standardized test, or knowing how to communicate, manage stress, set goals, and take personal responsibility? Sadly, the system has chosen the former. Instead of building character, resilience, and life readiness, Schools are focused on metrics, benchmarks, and compliance. Students are trained to memorize, regurgitate, and move on. But when life demands creativity, critical thinking, or perseverance, many fold under the pressure because they've never been taught how to respond. Basic life skills like how to manage money, resolve conflict, build healthy relationships, or even cook a simple meal have vanished from the curriculum. Shop class, home economics, and financial literacy were once standard. Now, they're seen as outdated. But guess what? Life hasn't changed. Rent still needs to be paid. Food still needs to be made. Problems still need to be solved. The only difference is, now we have young adults leaving school feeling like failures, not because they're dumb, but because they're unprepared. Meanwhile, emotional resilience is at an all-time low. Gen Alpha has been protected from discomfort to the point where a hard truth or a difficult challenge feels like an attack. Participation trophies, trigger warnings, and overaccommodation have created a soft mindset in a hard world. Schools are more concerned with not offending students than with building their strength. And so, the first time they face real adversity, rejection, failure, or criticism, they don't know how to handle it. They quit, shut down, or blame others. And what about responsibility? Schools have shifted toward coddling instead of cultivating. When students don't turn in work, the blame goes to the teacher. When they misbehave, there's a program or excuse for it. Accountability has become optional. And that's a dangerous lesson to teach a generation. Life doesn't care about your excuses. The world doesn't bend to accommodate your feelings. But if no one teaches this early, young people hit adulthood like a brick wall. We cannot expect strong adults to emerge from a system that avoids hard truths, punishes discipline, and prioritizes optics over outcomes. If we want to fix this crisis, we need to get back to the fundamentals, teaching students how to think, not what to think, equipping them with the tools to build a life, not just pass a test. Because if schools continue to fail at preparing kids for the real world will be forced to deal with a generation that's completely unprepared. Masculinity isn't toxic, it's missing. And the absence of it is destroying the very structure that once held schools, families, and society together. In a time when everything that made boys strong, discipline, responsibility, competitiveness being labeled as a problem, we're watching an entire generation lose its sense of identity, purpose, and drive. The classroom is only the latest casualty in a much larger cultural collapse. Boys are being told to sit still, be quiet, and suppress everything that comes naturally to them. Their energy is seen as disruptive. Their desire to lead is seen as arrogant. Their competitiveness is seen as aggressive. But here's the truth. Young men don't need to be silenced. They need to be shaped. They don't need to be punished for being boys. They need to be mentored into men. Instead, they're being medicated, corrected, and constantly told that their instincts are dangerous. Over time, that message sinks in, and boys stop trying. This suppression doesn't make them kinder. It makes them passive, angry, and confused. You see it every day in schools, boys zoning out, lashing out, or giving up. They're not lazy by nature. They're lost in a world that tells them their natural strength is something to be ashamed of. And when a boy loses his sense of healthy masculinity, he doesn't just lose motivation, he loses his path. Purpose disappears. And without purpose, there is no reason to engage, no reason to learn, no reason to grow. Schools, desperate to maintain order and meet quotas, have started catering to fragility rather than fostering fortitude. They avoid confrontation, lower standards, and dilute competition in the name of equality. But equality without structure creates chaos. And boys, more than anyone, suffer from that chaos. They need clear boundaries, high expectations, and challenges that push them to rise, not shrink. When those are taken away, you get classrooms full of disengaged boys who don't care, because no one has asked them to care like a man. The long-term effects are devastating. We now see boys falling behind in every academic category. They're more likely to be diagnosed with behavioral issues, more likely to drop out, and less likely to attend college. But even worse than the stats is the spirit behind them. These boys don't just lack achievement, they lack belief in themselves. And when boys grow up without believing in their power, they either disappear into passivity or explode into rebellion. Both outcomes are preventable. Both are symptoms of the same root problem. If we want our schools and our society to thrive again, we have to stop vilifying masculinity and start cultivating it. That doesn't mean raising bullies. It means raising protectors, builders, and leaders. Boys need to be taught that strength is not something to be feared or shamed. It's something to be channeled. Because when boys are allowed to be strong, structured, and disciplined, they become the men who hold society together. And right now, that's exactly what we're missing. No one becomes a teacher for the money. They do it because they believe they can make a difference. They step into classroom with fire in their hearts, determined to shape minds, spark curiosity, and leave a lasting impact. But over time, that fire is smothered by a system that rewards obedience over passion, silence over innovation, and burnout over balance. Teachers aren't quitting because they've stopped caring. They're quitting because the system has made caring unbearable. Imagine trying to inspire students while constantly being told to stick to the script, follow the pacing guide, teach the test, and don't step out of line. That's the reality for thousands of educators across the country. There's no room for creativity, no space to connect deeply with students. Every minute is scheduled, monitored, and boxed in by policy. The joy of teaching, the very reason many got into profession, is choked out by red tape and rigid bureaucracy. And while administrators pile on new programs, mandate, and trainings, they rarely stop to ask what teachers actually need. Many of these initiatives sound good on paper, but do nothing to improve the real challenges in the classroom. Instead, they increase workload, reduce autonomy, and leave teachers feeling micromanaged and undervalued. It's not uncommon for passionate educators to stay up late planning dynamic lessons only to be told their test scores still aren't high enough, or their classroom management style doesn't align with district policy. Then there's the emotional toll. Teachers form deep bonds with their students. They care about their struggles, their growth, and their lives outside of school. But when those students face trauma, act out, or fall behind, teachers are expected to fix it all without the training, support, or authority to truly intervene. The emotional weight of caring so deeply while feeling powerless is something few outside the profession truly understand. Worse still, when teachers finally speak up when they ask for smaller class sizes, better resources, or just a little respect, they're often met with silence or even punishment. Many are told they're being negative or not team players. Some are quietly pushed out for challenging the status quo. The message is clear. Don't make waves, even if the ship is sinking. What gets lost in all this noise is the fact that most teachers want to stay. They want to mentor. They want to guide. They want to inspire. But passion alone isn't enough to survive a system that seems designed to grind people down. At some point, the most caring, dedicated teachers are forced to ask themselves a hard question. Is this worth my mental health, my time with my family, my peace? And more, the answer is becoming no. We're not just losing teachers. We're losing warriors of wisdom and compassion. And every time one walks away, a classroom loses not just professional, but protector, a leader, and a spark of hope. If we want to rebuild the education system, it starts by respecting the very people holding it together with everything they have left. We're living in the age of ease. Everything is one click away. Food, entertainment, answers, even connection. But in chasing convenience, we've created a generation terrified of struggle. Gen Alpha is growing up in a world where difficulty is seen as failure, and instant results are the only acceptable outcome. This mindset is bleeding into classrooms, homes, and eventually society. And it's one of the biggest reasons schools are falling apart and teachers are walking away. Hard work has been rebranded as too much stress. Discipline is labeled toxic. Expectations are called unrealistic. Instead of rising to meet challenges, students are being taught to avoid them. When something gets hard, they're given accommodations. When they fall behind, the bar is lowered. The result is a growing wave of young people who expect success without effort and progress without persistence. But the real world doesn't work like that, and when reality hits, it hits hard. This fear of struggle creates fragile students. The moment they encounter resistance, whether it's a tough assignment, constructive criticism, or conflict, they shut down. Teachers, once seen as mentors and guides, are now seen as the enemy for simply holding students accountable. Many educators are forced to walk on eggshells, afraid that challenging a student might lead to a complaint, a parent call, or administrative backlash. So they stop pushing. They water down lessons. They pass students who haven't earned it just to avoid conflict and keep the peace. The deeper problem is that avoiding struggle doesn't protect students. It weakens them. Just like muscles need resistance to grow, young minds need adversity to mature. When we strip away every obstacle, we don't empower kids, we paralyze them. We send them into adulthood with no mental calluses, no coping skills, and no concept of how to fight through difficulty. And when that happens, society pays the price. Meanwhile, teachers who try to uphold standards and instill work ethic are often punished for doing so. They're told to be more understanding, more flexible, more trauma-informed, terms that often translate into letting things slide. But teachers know the truth. Lowering expectations doesn't help students succeed. It sets them up for failure later on, when the world expects something schools never demanded. Over time, this constant compromise erodes a teacher's purpose. They stop feeling like educators and start feeling like babysitters for a generation that's been conditioned to avoid discomfort at all costs. And here lies the crisis. Education without struggle is entertainment, not preparation. Growth requires grit. Maturity requires pressure. Success requires failure. But none of these are possible if students are never taught how to push through hard things. Until we stop shielding kids from struggle and start teaching them how to face it head-on, our schools will keep producing students who are smart enough to know the shortcut, but too soft to stay the course. If we want Gen Alpha to lead, build, and thrive, we have to bring back the value of hard things. Because comfort doesn't create greatness. Struggle does. The house is on fire, and we're arguing about the color of the curtains. While classrooms erupt in chaos, teachers walk out in silence, and Gen Alpha slips deeper into emotional, intellectual, and moral decline. Society continues to treat this crisis like a minor inconvenience. But this isn't just an education problem. It's a culture problem. And if we don't wake up now, we won't be debating how to fix the system. We'll be digging through the ashes of what used to be one. The truth is brutal, but it's necessary. Schools are no longer raising leaders. They're producing emotionally fragile, unmotivated, and entitled young people who are completely unprepared for the real world. And it's not the teachers who failed. They were overworked, silenced, and stripped of every tool that once made their work meaningful. It's the system, the culture, and the silence of everyone who saw the decline and said nothing. Masculinity has been vilified. Discipline has been replaced with appeasement. Struggle is avoided like a disease. And in the middle of it all, boys are falling behind. Families are breaking down, and classrooms are becoming daycare centers for emotional chaos. We don't need more policies. We need a backbone. We need structure. We need a cultural course correction that reintroduces responsibility, respect, and resilience both in schools and in homes. If you're a parent, get involved. If you're a mentor, step up. If you're a man who's figured out how to lead with strength and purpose, the next generation needs to hear from you. Start conversations with young men. Challenge them. Push them to earn their confidence. Not expect it for free. If you're watching schools collapse and saying, "That's not my problem," think again, because those kids will be tomorrow's employees, voters, leaders, and neighbors. This isn't about going back to the past. It's about reclaiming what was right about it. Respect for authority, pride in hard work, and belief in personal responsibility. It's about restoring the role of strong male figures, empowering teachers to actually teach, and helping kids rediscover the value of doing hard things. The classroom can still be saved, but only if we stop pretending this is someone else's job. The future isn't something we inherit. It's something we build. Start building.